Good morning and welcome to the Planning Hearing Officers hearing for March 29th, 2017. My name is Laura Stotler and I'll be serving as hearing officer for the first two items. The last item on the agenda, Vilya Zamatitis will serve as hearing officer. We have three addresses and relevant exhibits are posted on the panels located directly behind me. The agenda, staff reports, and recommendation for each of today's cases can be found on the city's website. A copy of the hearing procedures are available at the counter by the door next to the agendas, and you'll also find copies of the staff reports there as well. On our agenda today, we actually have a couple of different types of cases. We have parking reduction permits. Applications for parking reduction permits shall meet the procedures and criteria set forth in Section 30.32070A and Table 30.32B with qualifying project features. A discussion of these findings are all included in the staff report. And then we also have a variance under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.43 of the Glendale Municipal Code. A variance shall be granted if four required findings are present. If the evidence presented in the application at the hearing today meets the criteria, then the planning hearing officer can either approve or impose conditions for approval on the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by the use of public notices, which were mailed to property owners and occupants located within 500 feet of the subject property. There's a sign physically posted on the site in question, and there's an advertisement placed in the local newspaper and also posted on the city's website. Hearings will proceed as follows. We'll read a description of the requested entitlements. Then the case planner will make a brief overview of the case, give an analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will then be asked to come forward, stating both name and address, and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time limit. Others in support of or in opposition to the application and interested parties will then be asked to come forward to speak, stating both name and address with a 3-minute time limit. Lastly, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments or a rebuttal, if desired, in response to the testimonies given by the preceding speakers, and he will have a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will be closed and the case taken under submission. After the hearing, a decision will be prepared in writing, will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at this hearing or by submitting written responses and providing their name and mailing address. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. Under the appeals provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal may obtain forms and brochures on the procedures from the Permit Services Center located in room 101 of this building. If you wish to speak, please write your name and if you do wish to speak on any item, please write your name and address on one of the speaker's forms, which have been provided by the front door and submitted to our planning assistant. And these are the green forms. I'd also like to inform everyone that the official proceedings of the hearing are being recorded as part of the public record, as you can probably hear from the feedback. So for the first case, this is a continuation. Thanks. It's located at 2331 Honolulu Avenue, Suites A through D, Casa Cordoba. Is a parking reduction permit, case number PPRP 1628270, and administrative use permit PAUP 1627425. And again, this was a continued item from March 15th. The applicant is Janelle Williams with Williams Land Use Services. This is a parking reduction permit to allow the expansion of a full-service restaurant into an adjacent 70903 square foot tenant space without providing 6 additional parking spaces, and an administrative use permit to allow the sale of alcoholic beverage, including expanding the hours of operation in the commercial retail zone in Honolulu. The project is exempt from California Environmental Quality Act as Class 1 existing facilities exemption. And with that, I would like to ask our case planner to provide a presentation.
Thank you, Hearing Officer Stotler. The subject property is approximately 7,375 square feet lot with a 2-story, 4,600 square foot building, which was built in 1981, which is located at the front property line and has an interior courtyard. The building currently has 3 occupants, a full-service restaurant, Casa Cordoba, is currently located on the ground level of the building in units B, C, and D, and is approximately, as noted, 1,455 square feet in area. It has operated since November 2012. Unit A, which is the only remaining unit on the ground floor, was recently vacated by an office use, and Casa Cordoba is proposing to expand into this 793 square foot interior and exterior space. Currently, the sale and service of beer and wine with a Type 41 alcoholic beverage control ABC license is allowed. The applicant is proposing to add the sale and service of distilled spirits with a Type 47 ABC license when such license becomes available. Also, the applicant is proposing to extend the current hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. 7 days a week to 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. all week. So it's 1 additional hour every night. There are 9 on-site parking spaces located on the upper level at the rear of the property, which currently serve the building. Access to the parking lot is provided by a 10-foot wide alley, which is located between Ocean View Boulevard and Wickham Way. Immediately adjacent to the private lot, public parking lot is provided across the alley, and city parking lots 4, which is 44 spaces, and lot 6, which has 23 spaces. Access to the public parking lots is provided by the alley on the south and Florencita Drive on the north. The previous office use required 2.7 spaces per 1,000 square feet of floor area. The proposed restaurant use requires 10 spaces per 1,000 square feet of floor area. Per our code, 2 spaces are we call credited from the previous use based on the 2.7 spaces per 1,000 square feet for the 793 square foot space. So the proposed expansion use would require 8 spaces based on the 10 space requirement. As the site is fully built out and no additional parking can feasibly be provided on the site, Casa Cordoba is seeking a parking reduction permit for the parking shortfall of 6 spaces. Regarding comments from other city departments, no major concerns were received from the various city division departments for the administrative use permit and parking reduction permit. Suggested conditions made by the police department are included in the draft conditions of approval. Traffic and Transportation Division noted that for this specific project, the hours of operation and peak times proposed should not negatively impact parking in the area. Staff received 2 letters of support, one from the Montrose Shopping Park Association and from a resident. Staff is recommending approval of, believes the findings can be met, is recommending approval with conditions, and the findings can be found in the staff report. That's my presentation, if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to call forward now Janelle Williams.
Good morning. We have a full house today. Thank you, Kathy. I would like to start by giving you 2 more letters of support from neighbors.
Thank you.
And I guess start with the parking reduction permit application. We're going into the former office that was in the front of the building, expanding into that 793 square foot space. So it would be taking it from a legal non-conforming office use on the ground floor on Honolulu to a fully compliant space, which is the expansion of the restaurant. Recent parking studies for the area have shown that adequate parking inventory is in very close proximity to the site during all hours of operation, and as many retail businesses will close at 5 o'clock p.m., restaurants that remain open after 5 o'clock generally are wrapping up their dinner around 7 or 8 o'clock. So it is common knowledge that in the Montrose Shopping Park, parking is largely supplied off-site for most businesses there. The utilization of the off-site parking in Montrose is still within the intent of the code and really is precisely what those parking lots were created for in light of the shortages. The intent of the parking regulations can be met through the use of the existing on-street parking, public parking lots, and off-street parking. And Montrose is a very walkable area of our city. A lot of people will park their car in one spot and then visit several of the locations there in the Montrose Shopping Park. It's very pedestrian friendly, and public transportation is readily available to that site immediately adjacent to Casa Cordova. So if you have any questions regarding the parking reduction permit, we can move on to the AUP.
No, I don't have any further questions with the parking reduction permit. Also, I would just note that the North Glendale Community Plan does provide for shared parking at the Montrose Shopping Center, so I recognize that it was designed for that. So thank you.
Thank you for that. The AUP. This request is for an administrative use permit. Their current AUP is active and current, but for the fact that we're expanding into this 792 square foot space, we need coverage for that area as well. So we have to start over again. Also to add distilled spirits, because there are a lot of really fantastic Spanish distilled spirits being offered right now, and we'd like to take advantage of that when the time comes for us to get a license.
Okay.
Until such time as that 47 license is available, either through the alcoholic beverage control drawing or by some other means. And we're asking to extend our hours of operation 1 hour every day. And the Type 40, just so you know, the Type 47 license authorizes the sale of beer, wine, and distilled spirits. The only difference from the license that they have, the license that they have also allows a patron to purchase a bottle of wine and take it home if they so choose. This 47 also covers that amenity. This particular establishment has become a proven asset to the community. People love Casa Cordova. It consistently gets an A rating with the health department, great Yelp reviews, and adding the 47 license will really enhance their ability to serve the community. Crime statistics in general will show that a full-service restaurant that serves alcoholic beverages, including distilled spirits, will not intend to intensify crime in the area. Glendale police have indicated that such operations don't typically result in calls for police service, and Casa Cordova has a very clean record with the police since their opening in 2012. So we say that no impact will occur as a result of this AUP. They offer a welcome and a needed amenity in the Montrose Shopping Park, and they also maintain a boutique selling Spanish goods, such as pottery and wines and olives, cooking oils, cookbooks, and accessories. So they're a welcome addition to the Montrose Shopping Park. They serve an underserved market for authentic Spanish experience. And Jeannie Bone, the owner, is here. And I hope she talks a little bit about what she does to keep it authentic. She actually travels to Spain on a regular basis and meets with chefs over there. So if you have any questions in relation to that.
The only question is, I heard there was a concern with some of the conditions of approval, specifically Condition 8 on the administrative use permit related to dancing. Right now the condition reads dancing is not permitted. However, I'm fine with having dancing at a special event, so if we want to put limits of maybe for a year on a special event, that
we'd be very happy with that.
Okay. So with that, would you have any other concerns with the conditions of approval?
No, we've reviewed the conditions and we're happy with them.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Much.
Next, I'd like to call forward Jeannie Bone.
Hi, I'm Jeannie, I'm owner of Casa Cordoba, and it's been a very wonderful experience to be able to bring a Spanish experience to Montrose. I think not only as we have progressed in the restaurant, because of my passion and commitment to making it as a feeling of being in Spain as much as possible when one is still in the United States and in Montrose. I've traveled with my chef to Spain several times in order to talk to people, take in the experience, bring it back so we all share a common vision for what we would like the experience to be for our clientele. And I think one of the things that we've been successful at is because there's very few Spanish restaurants in Los Angeles, is making that experience, bringing that experience to Montrose, where people come from various parts of Los Angeles to come to Montrose, many for the first time, to come to Casa, but then they find out how really wonderful the area is, and it's really beautiful. So I hope that we contribute something to the community by bringing something, a very unique, focused vision to Montrose. And it's been my entire life experience I feel very proud and happy to be able to do that every day I go to work, and I'm proud and happy to have this restaurant in Montrose. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no more cards on this case. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, I would ask Janelle Williams, do you have any other comments? Would you like to make closing comments?
Well, we'll keep it short. I just want to thank you for your time and consideration and willingness to take a look at that condition, and we'll leave it at that.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, I have no more comments on this item. I will close the public hearing. I believe I can make all the findings that are in both cases, and therefore I am approving the parking reduction permit, case number PPRP 1628270, and I'm also approving administrative use permit, case number PAUP 1627425, with all of the conditions as provided in the staff report, with the exception that for the administrative use permit, item number 8, condition number 8, I will accept an amendment that would allow a special event dancing up to 4 times per year. Right? So with that, this hearing item is now closed, and I will go to the next item. The next one is located at 913921 South Adams Street. This is a density bonus housing plan, case number PDBP 1529626. This item was continued from the hearing on March 22nd. The applicant is LMA2 LLC. The application is for a density bonus housing plan to construct a new 4-story, 18-unit affordable rental housing project with 3 concessions and 1 waiver pursuant to Government Code Section 65915 and Glendale Municipal Code Section 30.36, with 2 units being reserved for very low-income households, located at 913 to 921 South Adams Street and the R1650 medium-high density residential zone. Development of the project requires demolition of 3 existing single-family residents and design review board approval. Those would be separate approvals that are not considered here. The project is exempt from the CEQA review as Class 32 infill development projects pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. So with that, I would like to ask the case planner for a presentation.
Yes, Ms. Stotler. Thank you. This case was continued from last week's hearing on March 22. The proposal is to develop an 18-unit affordable housing building, and the applicant is requesting 3 incentives and 1 waiver, as stated in the public notice. At the last hearing, we heard testimony, and then the applicant requested continuance so that additional time was necessary to look into the open space requirements. And we are back here to continue with the hearing. Staff believes the findings for approval can be made, and these are detailed in the staff report. If there are questions, I'm ready to answer them. Otherwise, I'd like to conclude my little presentation.
No, I think I know you did a presentation last week, so I have no further questions. Thank you. I'd like to call forward the applicant, Armek Shahanazarians, followed by Michael Asadurian. And just as a reminder that the applicant and the owner together have 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. The project is zoned in a high-density multifamily zone. We're developing the project per Glendale Municipal Code Section 30.36 and the Government Code Section 65915, which is a state density bonus affordable housing law. The state affordable housing law, the law requires local government and cities to provide density bonus and other incentives to the developers of affordable housing who commit to providing a certain percentage of dwelling units to persons whose incomes do not exceed specific thresholds. Our project consists of this affordable housing. Per City of Glendale, we have to provide additional common outdoor space due to the fact that the lot is being more than 90 feet in width. We cannot meet this requirement merely because we're providing 36 parking spaces to meet the requirements of the Glendale zoning code. Even though per state affordable housing code, we do not have to provide all these 36 parking spaces, but we feel that due to the parking shortage in the neighborhood, we'd rather provide the parking spaces than the additional common outdoor spaces. As I indicated, the state doesn't require us to provide additional 36 parking spaces. We can have maybe 18 spaces, and the other portion of the spaces we can devote to the additional outdoor common space. But we feel that in our best of interest of the neighborhood and everything else, it's much better to provide the parking spaces than the additional outdoor common spaces. But also I want to mention that we are meeting the 200 square feet per unit of spaces.
Okay.
So additional spaces. So if there's any question I can ask you, answer. I'd be more than happy to.
Okay, no, I think you went through a lot of information last time, so I don't have any further questions.
Okay, thank you.
And next I'd like to call forward Michael Asadurian, followed by Lena Asadurian.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. I don't have much to add except just to reemphasize that we have decided to go above grade as far as parking, basically because of reluctance. Obviously, if we were to go subterranean or even semi-subterranean, we would have lost the first row of parking spaces, which is a total of 4 parking spaces. So we'll bring the parking spaces down from 36 to 32. That is if we go semi-subterranean. If we were to go to subterranean, we would have lost 2 rows, so a total of about 8 parking spaces, bringing it down to 28 parking. So that's the reason basically we decided to go above grade parking in order to provide the maximum number of parking.
Well, so if you went below grade,
yes,
at all,
well, we're going
would
to
the
compromise.
cost make it prohibitive to
No,
have affordable housing?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what. Okay.
Yeah, because of the sloping issues, to go down into the parking, we had to lose certain parking spaces because of that. So keeping it above grade gives us the opportunity to keep all parking, to provide maximum parking space.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Next, Lena Asadurian? Nope, waiver, okay. Then I have Hilma Shahinian, followed by Jennifer Barrios.
Hi there. I live at 1018 East Garfield. It's a corner building. Cross street is Adams and Garfield. My family's owned that building since '76. I've watched this neighborhood expand and grow and become more and more congested. The thought of having another huge building with 18 units and possibly 36 cars is a little bit daunting. And already we have an unbelievable problem with parking. We have the Glendale Community College students that have completely inundated the whole area. They park all the way down Garfield, all the way up on both sides, up and down Adams. There are times that we haven't found parking for multiple blocks because all these cars are, in the area. And now we're adding more. And even though there's 36 parking spaces for this property, every property that I know of in the area has multiple cars. It's not just 2 cars. So that is a big problem. And then on top of that, to claim that there's they need to make more parking spaces and decrease the green space, that I just don't believe it. And I'm here to object to this plan and protect my neighborhood that I love so much and I've lived in and grown up in. Hopefully with the rest of the situation in the area, neighborhood will tackle those when the time comes. But when I saw this building and the proposal go up, I couldn't make it last week, unfortunately, but I made an effort to come this week to make sure that I'm, understand everything that's happening. So I don't know the details very well, but I would appreciate this being more attention to the congestion in the area. And I'm saying this because I've lived there and we experience it on a daily basis. But when people come in and build, they don't know what's happening, and that's unfortunate. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I just want to address some of the concerns with parking. In terms of density bonus housing law, the parking has been taken over by the state in terms of what the required parking is. So we don't have a lot of options when it comes to an affordable housing project. The state's basically taken the city's ability to add or require more parking away from us. As it stands right now, the way the law is, if someone is building an affordable housing project and they're within a half mile of a bus stop, a transit stop, then they're only required to have 0.5 spaces per unit. So if you're looking at an 18-unit apartment, they're only required by state law to have 9 parking spaces. City doesn't have any say over that. So if they're willing to provide additional parking spaces, I just think they're recognizing what's going on in the neighborhood, the fact that there's a parking reduction. And I just wanted to put that out there that I know if people are frustrated with the city, but realize that the city is just implementing state law when it comes to parking, and that's everywhere in the city when you get to an affordable housing project. So I'm sorry about that, but that is just in terms of when we apply the law, we are applying the state law in this case. The next speaker I have is Jennifer Barrios. Oh, I haven't heard from you. Okay. Yeah.
I'm Jennifer Barrios. I'm also a neighbor. I live in the neighborhood. I've lived there over 14 years now, or about 14 years, I guess. I spoke last week, and what I'm hearing this week, it's still quite disturbing. The quality of life in the neighborhood has gotten worse. I went to a meeting that same evening last week. It was like a safe route to school for children. It seems to me the city is, imposing. It's applying the state laws, but the city should be protecting the community. I know up in the Toll area, we had an 11-year-old child killed because of the traffic up there. It feels to me like they're waiting for something similar to happen here. We have a preschool, we have 2 elementary schools, we have a hospital, we have a community college, all in this area. They're parking up and down the street, away from these areas that are not providing enough parking. Besides the fact that building more spaces, building more buildings in this area, less greenery, that's been an issue for my children. My younger child can't even ride a bike because he's almost been hit by cars just riding on the sidewalk. There's no green space. We have to walk quite a distance to either Palmer Park or Maple Park to have any greenery for my child to play in. And only Palmer Park really offers him any place to even learn how to ride a bike in a park. So I know this is an issue the city's dealing with, having enough green space, trying to build pockets of green space. I know that our neighbor that was here last week, I don't know that they addressed the issue that they told me that they have issues maintaining renters because there's absolutely no parking for the renters. So the renters come and go. because of that issue. So, I mean, the fact that there's a bus stop, it doesn't mitigate. I mean, our area is, we have magnet schools. People drive their children to schools because they don't walk to neighborhood schools. There's no parks for our kids to play in. And they just keep building and building and building. So that's my opposition to increased building in our neighborhood. And hopefully the city, even though there are state laws, will safeguard the residents, because we don't have that voice. We just don't. So thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other cards. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this item? Card, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is it on the folder?
Oh, yes. Oh, I have two more cards. Okay. I have Mary Baldwin, followed by Grant Michaels.
Hello, my name is Mary Baldwin, and I live in the Adams Hill area. And I just want to start from a personal note. This is a tragedy for this neighborhood. To have only 2 low-income units and call it a low-income project is really a farce. And we need every bit of green space that there is. And to give them this variance further exacerbates the problems in this area. I don't know how they can get away with it, of getting all the variances. The parking is bad enough, and I realize the state supersedes it. But you have a chance to save some green space. We need every tree. We need every leaf. We need something to cover up this monstrosity. I think that you should also make them put the parking underground, because it takes away light and air from the home next door to it. I just think that, if you live down there and you realize they're taking away 3 affordable homes to put in basically 16 high-end units with 2 supposedly affordable units, it just doesn't work out. And I would like them to prove to me that they can't add landscaping or they can't add green space. I think the city should prove to the city why that doesn't work. It's not fair to these residents. It's not fair to all of us who are going to live with the mess. They won't be living near the mess. And it just sparks a lot of anger in this neighborhood. And I'm speaking for much of Adams Hill. I'm speaking for anyone who lives in the area. What affects us, it affects us all. And it makes living in the city difficult without, that they can't put in green space. It just seems unreasonable. Thank you.
Thanks. Next, Grant Michaels.
Good morning. My name is Grant Michaels. While I am involved in many organizations with the city, I am speaking today as an individual. I attended last week's hearing and followed the staff report. The 4th condition for the reduction of open space, I have looked at that with interest of how that is required to make the project affordable. The applicant's proposal states the interior courtyard is required so that the units are livable for comfort. If we were to apply that same logic and put similar developments on all 4 sides, that same logic with the reduced setbacks would have the buildings be congested and crowded. I have not heard a compelling argument from my perspective for the affordability required to where the configuration of the project could not be reconfigured, the interior courtyard reduced, additional open space created, and still complete the project with its affordability goals. I don't support the 4th or granting of that 4th request for the affordable housing. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Is there anybody else who submitted a card or anybody else who hasn't submitted a card and wishes to speak on this item? Okay, if not, then I will call forward Mr. Shahanazarian for rebuttal.
I just want to mention that the lot that we're developing is roughly about 18,000 square feet, and we are providing landscaping of roughly about 5,000 square feet as shown on the plans. And just one correction, that the existing houses that are being demoed, none of them are affordable houses. So just a note. By saying that, I just want to thank you for consideration.
All right. Any other comments? Does anybody else in your team wish to speak? No?
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I'm going to take this item, I'm going to close the public hearing and take this item under consideration, and I'll be issuing a decision on it shortly. Right. That includes my items as far as a hearing officer today. We do have an additional item, and we'll be changing hearing officers.
Hey, good morning. My name is Vilya Zamaitaitis, and I will be the hearing officer for the last item on today's agenda, which is a parking exception case number 1703990 and a variance case number 1605003 for a project located at 1820 South Brand Boulevard. The applicant is requesting an approval of a 6-story, 26-unit live-work development. The proposal will include a total of 103 parking spaces, including 46 in a tandem configuration. The applicant is also requesting a parking exception to allow less than the minimum number of parking spaces required for the development, and a variance to allow development of the live-work units less than the required minimum size and minimum size. Again, this is for a project located at 1820 South Brand Boulevard. There were a number of comments from various city departments, and as soon as I read those into the record, I will then turn the matter over to the case planner to give a short presentation. So I'm going to look towards the applicant. You've received copies of all the interdepartmental comments, is that correct? Yes, I see nods of heads. So the first set was from the Public Works Engineering Department, and there were various off-site improvements that are being required, specifically an ADA handicap accessible ramp, since this is a corner lot, so on Brand Boulevard on Vassar Avenue. So improvements of the ADA ramp, various sidewalk improvements, drainage, sump in the subterranean parking garage proposed. And so you've read through all the various public works departments. Okay, I see nodding of heads. Next set of comments came from the Glendale Water and Power. And I did not see any substantive conditions or comments, except there was a mention made that the proposed subterranean garage may be in conflict with the existing underground electrical service serving the Sealy building. So you will need to address that. The standard conditions from the Fire Engineering Department to comply with all fire codes. Same with the Building and Safety Department comments to comply with all the building and safety codes. The Parks Department had comments in regards to the development impact fees, which would need to be paid. In terms of housing, now housing had a comment regarding the mandatory inclusionary housing obligations, since you're located in the San Fernando Road redevelopment area. And this is a rental project. This is not a condominium home ownership. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm seeing nods. So the yes. So this does not apply. And last, comments from the urban forester regarding the street trees. So that will be addressed as part of design review as well. So with that said, I would like to turn the hearing over to Mr. Roger Kiesel for the staff's presentation.
All right, good morning, Ms. Zematitis. The applicant is requesting approval of a 6-story, 26-unit live-work development located at 1820 South Brand Boulevard. The project will include a total of 103 parking spaces, including 46 in a tandem arrangement. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow development of live-work units less than the minimum size required, and a parking exception to allow less than the minimum number of parking spaces required for the developments. The subject site is located in the San Fernando Road redevelopment project area and zoned SFMU, which is commercial residential mixed use. The 15,800 square foot site is located on the northeast corner of South Brand Boulevard and Vassar Street. The site currently is developed with a 12,000 square foot one-story commercial building constructed in 1998 and used currently as a car rental agency. It also includes a surface parking lot. The existing commercial building and surface parking lot will be demolished as a result of the project. The proposed live-work units will range from approximately 775 square feet to 1,980 square feet in size and in studio and one-bedroom configurations. As I mentioned before, there are 103 parking spaces that include 46 tandem spaces proposed on the site in subterranean, at-grade, and above-grade levels. Access to the parking will be from a driveway located off of Vassar Street. I'll first go over the variance. The zoning code requires that the minimum total floor area for live-work space shall be 1,000 square feet within each unit. 9 of the proposed 26 live-work units are or will be less than 1,000 square feet. 3 will be approximately 775 square feet in area, and 6 units will be 850 square feet in area. And just as a kind of a note, the first page of the staff report, the square footages were in error. I incorrectly cited the units less than 1,000 square feet as being 816 and 904. They're actually 775 and 850. So, the applicant is requesting approval of the variance to allow 9 of the 26 units to be less than the minimum required 1,000 square feet in area. Staff believes that the findings can be made to support the variance. A live-work unit is an integrated. The sort of the definition is an integrated dwelling unit and workspace occupied and utilized by a single housekeeping unit in a structure designed to accommodate both residential occupancy as well as work activity. And this unit needs to have a complete kitchen as well as bathroom. The proposed live-work units under the minimum 1,000 square feet in area will comply with the intent of this ordinance. All units have full kitchens and bathrooms. The smaller units that we're most concerned about with this variance are actually contain what I termed in the staff report alcove bedrooms. They're not fully enclosed bedrooms, but they're kind of an alcove arrangement so that the living working area is sort of in the first part of the units. There are kitchen, bathroom facilities in the middle part, and then the bedroom alcove is in the rear. So that maintains the required integration of live work while allowing some privacy for the occupants of the unit. The average unit size in the proposed development is just over 1,100 square feet. The city's zoning ordinance requires efficiency in one-bedroom multifamily dwelling units to be a minimum of 600 feet. And all the live-work units in the proposed development exceed this minimum size requirement. There are two live-work units proposed on the South Brand Boulevard frontage. These units are the largest proposed within the development, roughly 1,800 and just under 2,000 square feet. And these units include multiple levels. The ground floors of each unit include large open areas with significant glazing facing Brand Boulevard. The design of these units reinforces the dominant commercial nature intended for live-work units. The project's proposed live-work land use is encouraged in the San Fernando Road redevelopment plan and is unique to the surrounding neighborhood and to the SFMU zone. A recent upgrade and improvement to the Seeley's site, which is just sort of north of the project, immediately north. That site does contain three live-work units, but aside from the new Seeley's complex, as well as the recently opened Arts Colony project located in the DSP area in downtown, there really are no other live-work units proposed or existing in the city. So live-work units are unique. As I mentioned before, live-work units are intended to primarily function as workspaces. The largest units in the proposed project are multi-level, front Brand Boulevard. And given the size and configuration of the two units, it is anticipated that they will reinforce the commercial active nature that is desired along Brand Boulevard. The 9 units less than 1,000 square feet, the ones that we're talking about in the variance, are located on the 4th, 5th, and 6th floors of the project, and more than likely will contain sole proprietors or office-type uses. While the 9 proposed live-work unit sizes are smaller than the minimum required, they are comparable to standard one-bedroom multifamily dwellings. The objective of live-work ordinance is to enable individuals to conduct business from their place of residence, which allows employees and customers to patronize their business. The variance request will not be contrary to this objective. As I mentioned before, the larger live-work units on Brand will facilitate an active street front desired. And the reduced size units will not prevent employees or customers from coming to the business. However, as I mentioned before, these businesses are more than likely going to be smaller in scale and more office-like. Now I'd like to go into the parking exception. Live-work units less than 2,000 square feet in area require 3 parking spaces per unit. So in this case, a minimum of 78 parking spaces are required for the project. There are 26 units times 3, 78 is the minimum number of parking spaces required. The applicant is proposing to provide a total of 103 on-site parking spaces at grade, in subterranean, and above grade levels. Of those 103 parking spaces, though, 57 will be accessible and 46 will be in a tandem arrangement. The applicant is requesting a parking exception for 21 spaces, which is the difference between 78 and 57, because in this area of the city, as well as most areas of the city, only accessible parking spaces are counted toward parking, and so in this case, they provide 57 accessible spaces. The subject site has frontage on South Brand Boulevard and Vassar Street. The property is 125 feet deep along Vassar and 163 feet deep at the northern boundary. As I mentioned before, there are 2 live-work units proposed along South Brand Boulevard frontage. And there are parking ramps on what I would say maybe the eastern property line, which allow access to the below grade as well as above grade parking spaces. Given the desirability of having an active street front along South Brand Boulevard and the necessity of providing parking ramps to provide access to required parking, the depth of the subject site is a space constraint which prevents the location of more than one drive aisle, which would allow all parking spaces to be accessible. There is only one drive aisle proposed, and with the live work units as well as the ramp, it would be impossible to provide more than one on the site, given the depth of the site. The proposed development will be consistent with the San Fernando Road Corridor Redevelopment Project Area Plan, as it will expand the supply of a relatively unique form of housing, live work. The project is designed in an attractive contemporary style, which will, should the parking exception and variance be approved, need to be approved by the Design Review Board, and more fully utilize an important commercial site at the entrance to the city. The proposed development requires 78 parking spaces. The parking exception is sought because all parking spaces are required to be accessible, and as I mentioned, 57 of those 78 required are accessible. While the city's parking standards do not recognize inaccessible spaces, mitigating circumstances are available so that the project will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or surrounding area. A condition of approval will be added, or is suggested to the approval of the project, requiring that the tandem spaces be assigned to the same live-work unit as the accessible space in front of it. So one unit controls both spaces, and that should alleviate the inconvenience of having a fraction of the spaces inaccessible. So staff supports granting the variance and parking exception with the draft findings and conditions. That concludes my presentation, although I did want to mention I did receive one email regarding the project, and they requested that their letter be read at the public hearing, so I'd like to do that. And it's somewhat lengthy. So, and this is from Patty Nally and Richard Hart, and they live in the residential area, sort of southeast of the project site. They start, Roger, we will not be able to attend the March 29th variance hearing and are writing to express our concerns regarding this project as it impacts our neighborhood. To be clear, our neighborhood is comprised of only 4 blocks to the east of the project. These 4 blocks form a completely isolated residential neighborhood, separated from other areas by 2 large arterial streets, the railroad tracks, and an industrial block. Whatever happens in the neighborhood has to be accommodated within these 4 blocks. Parking has disappeared in the neighborhood since the construction of Vassar City Lights next door to the proposed project and Glendale City Lights on San Fernando Road. When we expressed concern to City Council over the variance they received to provide less parking, we were assured that there would be no parking impacts, and assurance that has proven to be erroneous. Residents don't use the garage, they use the street. Visitors don't use the garage, they use the street. The net effect for the neighborhood is there is now very limited parking. If the neighborhood was larger or it wasn't as constricted, this wouldn't be as serious an issue. But there is nowhere to go. There is no parking on Brand Boulevard and only limited parking on San Fernando Road. And if you cross over San Fernando, there is forest lawn and one dead-end block in an industrial area that no one feels safe parking on at night. Before Vassar City Lights, there was parking along the south side of Vassar, opposite the proposed project, between Brand Boulevard and Topak Avenue. But the congestion caused by the driveway and visitors' double parking created a dangerous situation too close to the corner intersection. So the city painted the entire south side curb red, eliminating more parking. The proposed project will be adding congestion right at the same location. Tandem parking will require street parking. We know because we have to park our cars in tandem. We have an old craftsman house built in 1914 with a narrow driveway and no garage, like many homes in the neighborhood. We are constantly using street parking and double parking to shuffle cars, and it is just the two of us, similar to the proposed apartments. As we understand it, the size of the project does not trigger a traffic study, and the assumption is that the additional traffic load won't be focused at rush hour since the units are live-work. Please don't kid yourself or us. There is a housing shortage in Los Angeles, and the future residents won't necessarily have businesses. They will just be people desperate for a nice place to live. And they will all be using the intersection at Vassar Avenue and Brand, where there is no traffic light to get out of the neighborhood to go to their jobs. And there is no alternative route for them to leave by. There are no traffic lights at any of the exits from the neighborhood. Even if the units are used for work, where are their clients, customers, or assistants going to park? On the street where there is no parking left. This project could be classified as a small infill development, but we have just had two similar projects built in the neighborhood, the aforementioned Vassar and Glendale City Lights apartments, and the parcel at 1832 Brand is also slated for development. These small developments are having an outsized impact on our small neighborhood without any collective examination. Please do not grant the exceptions and variances requested. Patty Nally and Richard Hart.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kiesel. Just a few clarifications at this point in time. Before me today is a variance application for the size of the live-work units, okay, and then also a parking exception for the number of accessible spaces. Now, I'm not reviewing the design, which is under the purview of the Design Review Board. And as part of this application, I also have a negative declaration, which is an environmental document to consider before rendering a decision. So we are accepting public testimony regarding the variances, or the variance, the parking exception, and the environmental review. So with that said, one quick question regarding the number of parking spaces. I noticed that there are a number of compact spaces. Out of the 46 tandem spaces, how many are compact?
I believe 15, but I'll have to confirm that.
Okay.
But of the parking is somewhat convoluted.
Yes.
There are 78 spaces required. There are 103 provided. 46 are in a tandem arrangement, thus the need for a parking exception. Of those 46 tandem spaces, I believe roughly 15 are compact, the rest are standard. But those are sort of extra spaces, and they weren't really counted or analyzed in the staff report.
Okay. And now, if this was a multifamily residential project and not a live-work, because live-work requires 3 parking spaces per unit. If this was multifamily, it would go according to the multifamily parking standards, which
Correct.
would essentially be 2 parking spaces per unit. That's
Correct. For studio and one-bedroom configurated multifamily units, they require 2 spaces per unit, plus there'd be a quarter space per unit for guest parking, so that would be roughly 7 additional spaces for guest. So it would be, what would it be? 59 spaces.
All right, thank you. Okay, at this time I'd like to call up, I believe I have 2 speaker cards. I have the consultant, Mr. Rodney Khan, the property owner, Mr. Daniel Taban, and the architect, Vijay Sagal. Is that correct? Who would like to speak first? Mr. Rodney Khan. Okay, and I think you have 15 minutes total, so I'm not sure how you'd like to divide it up.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mrs. Emetitis, city staff. My name is Rodney Kahn. My offices are located on North Brand Boulevard here in the city of Glendale. As Mr. Kiesel gave in his presentation, he spoke about the type of project that we are proposing, which is a live-work project. We've seen maybe 1 or 2 units scattered throughout our city. We've never seen a building or a development that is entirely live-work until we see this here today. So this is a very desirable and unique situation that we have. As Mr. Kiesel also pointed out, we are located in the southernmost area of our city, and actually a gateway for people coming and leaving our city. This project itself is in close proximity, or directly north, is the historic Seeley's building. To the south of us, there's a commercial vacant building. I believe a project was proposed or is proposed there. Directly east of us, we have a larger affordable housing project, and that is the Vassar City Lights that was referenced in the letter. And in that letter, I will also address later in my presentation. To the west of us, we also have housing. We have Glendale City Lights. We have a restaurant, adult daycare, along with auto repair. Also, in very close proximity to us, is the Glendale Transportation Center. The Transportation Center has MTA, it has B-Line, it has light rail, so quite a number of different opportunity or transportation opportunities for people in the area. Our project was designed with certain goals in mind to provide a balanced project, a quality design, which we think we've achieved, a building that fits in with the neighborhood, a building that fits in with the footprint and the building envelope, obviously, that the SFMU standards require, a commercial live-work community that will actually energize this area. This is a redevelopment project area. This is an area that we'd like to see improved. This project will improve that. And lastly, as was talked about with the parking, to maximize the number of on-site parking, which would help alleviate parking in the area. The different applications that we've requested, there are 2. The parking exception findings, I'll touch on that because I want to address, 1, the traffic analysis that was done for this project, and 2, the letter that was read into the record, and be able to address those. First and foremost, the intent of the parking regulations is for us to provide off-street parking, sufficient off-street parking for a land use so that adjacent land uses, whether they be commercial or whether they be residential, are not impacted by our project. And in fact, traffic congestion and public street monitoring are part of those things. The quantity of our parking we are providing far exceeds the code. And as Roger pointed out, we actually have 25 additional parking spaces over what the code requires. That is something very different and very unique. Sometimes we have projects that have 1, 2, or 3 spaces. we have 25 spaces over what the code requires. We have 78 full-size spaces. When I say full-size, I mean in terms of the length, the width, the dimensions. As was mentioned, there are tandem spaces that are being provided, and that has been addressed. Those tandem spaces will be assigned to the same unit that the standard space is. So there will not be a difficulty in maneuvering both on-site or for changing out the parking spaces. The 25 additional spaces is where the compact spaces. You asked, Mrs. Zimatitis, how many compact spaces there are? There are 17. But those 17 are all in the additional non-required parking spaces. The letter, which I'll briefly address as part of the presentation that was cited, a couple of the key points that was stated. Residents don't use the garage, they use the streets. Visitors don't use the garage, they use the streets. I think the difficulty that that area has, or that particular person that's writing this has, is in that area there are a lot of older buildings. Those older buildings don't have sufficient parking. They don't have code-required parking, so they end up parking out in the street. That is an ongoing existing condition that has nothing to do with our project. Our project will provide far and above more than what the code requires. Also, the City of Glendale has a preferential parking program. So if that neighborhood felt that they were impacted for their existing parking, they could always pursue that. The second item, tandem parking will require street parking. We know that because they have to park their cars in tandem. They have an older building, they don't use their garage, and they double park and they park and shuffle cars in the street. Well, first of all, we will use our garage. Our parking far exceeds what the code requires. And secondly, in order to maneuver our cars, we would not have to go out into the street. We would not have to maneuver out in the public right-of-way. Quite frankly, everything happens on our project on site. And then last, as it relates to their comments, this did not trigger a traffic study. Well, we hired Jono Bogdanian and Associates. He did what is called a trip generation study. That trip generation study was based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and the trips that were generated were very, very minimal in number at the peak hour times. So therefore, nothing is required for us in terms of doing a transportation study, on top of which we did not even try to take any credit or credits for the existing land use, which is an automobile rental facility that in and of itself generates a tremendous number of trips. We did not factor that into our analysis. The circulation element classifies South Brand Boulevard between San Fernando Road and the southerly city boundary as a major arterial, and that could easily accommodate commercial and residential land uses. Traffic circulation to the site would be accessed off of Vassar, but primarily most of the traffic is coming along Brand Boulevard, both North Brand, South Brand Boulevard. The project itself, in terms of live work and being unique, the urban design guidelines of the City of Glendale discusses three primary components which we're fulfilling. One is a live work project, allows people to live, work, and shop all in one location. This will result in this environment. This unique project will actually stimulate and we hope act as a catalyst for property in this area. Last, as it relates to this parking exception not being materially detrimental, the request is not related to the quantity. The request is related to the configuration. Tandem configuration is the ability for us to maximize the number of parking spaces. In order to maximize the number of parking spaces, we oriented the project in such a way that we could get that many parking spaces, in addition to which we have a certain lot depth and lot width that we have to factor in to the overall project design. The driveway on the site has been strategically located to make the least impact on the intersection of Brand Boulevard and Vassar Avenue. Traffic circulation will meet city standards so that ingress and egress to the site will be safe and accord with generally accepted traffic engineering standards. That concludes this part of the presentation. We've reviewed the conditions of approval as well, and for this application, we would agree to comply with all of them. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them now, or I'll go to the next application.
Would you mind coming up to the presentation board and just showing the location of that driveway that's proposed in relation to the corner intersection?
Sure. So we have along, this is Brand, along Vassar. So the access to that driveway is here. This is our entry lobby. These are the two larger live-work units that were referenced along Brand Boulevard, which I'll speak about in the next application. So access will be coming in here. We have a circulation pattern where we have one level of subterranean, we have surface level, and then we have parking above that. All of the circulation takes place on site, but access to the driveway is here.
Thank you.
Once again, to touch on what Mr. Kiesel has already pointed out, and we agree with, in terms of the variance request. The variance request has to do with the live-work units, 9 of them, not meeting the minimum requirements, which is 1,000 square feet. And as was pointed out, before I get into the specifics, the average unit size, so if you took all the units for the building, the average unit size is actually 1,103 square feet. So for an average unit size, we would exceed what the code requires. The range of units that we're proposing, and we are looking at it from a few different perspectives. One, we wanted to keep that street Brand Boulevard frontage, as was talked about, in terms of the commercial use of the building. It's not a residential building, it's a live-work building. And the commercial activity on the building, especially along Brand Boulevard, was very significant to the city and very significant to us. There are different development standards that are referenced in your Glendale Municipal Code, most of them related to the floor area requirement, but also there's some other specifics that need to be highlighted. One, that not more than 50% of the total floor area of a unit should be used for living space. If you've seen the layout of our units, it's not designed that way at all. In fact, it achieves what the city is trying to achieve, which is predominantly to operate as a commercial activity area with residential quarters. And all of our units, no matter what the size, has been designed that way. Second, the live-work units fronting a public street. I've already talked about that. Those units being commercially activity and larger units, and then access to the units themselves and how they lay out. All of those requirements have been met in the project itself. Achieving your goals is just the slight variation for a few of the units on the upper floors being a little less than what the code requires. The highlighted by Mr. Kiesel as well is the reduced size of the units will not prevent employees or customers from coming to the business. It also allows an opportunity for different unit sizes and unit mixes for people to be able to rent. It is a rental project, to be able to afford to operate their business here and to live here as well. Those various unit sizes gives flexibility. The environmental document, I'll just touch briefly upon that. The last piece of this entitlement. There was analysis or extensive analysis done and that we have provided, also that Mr. Kiesel conducted in terms of the overall project. There was, in terms of the project itself or the environmental document, as you know, it was a negative declaration, So there were no mitigation measures that were required. There were quite a number of different items that were identified. Primarily, what was looked at was two items that I'd like to highlight. One is the traffic, and we addressed that as it relates to the traffic, trip generation and traffic analysis. That was not an issue. And the other had to do with noise. And once again, from a noise perspective, there were factors in that will be implemented into the project design and nothing that would be of concern for the city. All the other conditions or all the other analysis that was done for the environmental fell under the thresholds as it relates to CEQA guidelines. Anyway, that concludes my part of the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any more questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. And I do have speaker cards from the owner, Danielle Taban, and the architect, Vijay Sagal. Who would like to speak next?
Good morning, and my name is Vijay Sagal. I'm the architect of the project, as stated, and we're located just south of Glendale, Glendale, in the city of Los Angeles. And I think everything what I wanted to say has been already said and presented in the staff report and Mr. Khan's report presentation. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. And as the owner of the project, you'll be responsible, I believe, for either managing the building itself or hiring the management company.
Actually, I'm the architect.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Yes, that was the next question for that.
But I will say that, I'll just add that for this design of this building, how the building is laid out, we had several meetings with the planning over the last 18 months with Mr. Kesal, and so we have gone through the design process pretty extensively with the city.
Thank you. And yes, that will be the next step if and when the variance and parking exception are approved to go to design review. So I apologize. Yes. Mr. Taban.
Good morning. I am Daniel Taban of Jade Enterprises. Through our affiliates, we own this 1820 South Brand site as well as the Sealy building. In designing the project, the two are meant to complement each other. I would like to thank yourself, Mr. Kiesel, and the City of Glendale for all their support and help throughout the process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do have, actually, if you don't mind answering that question that I...
Through our in-house affiliate, we manage our own projects.
Okay. So specifically in their lease agreements that these units will be live-work and meant for, as noted, primarily work as opposed to just live. There's been a little bit of discussion whether or not these live-works can then merge or morph, I should say, into just straight-out apartment units.
No, absolutely. Our Sealy project directly to the north is a commercial project. We do have live-work on site and is intended to be utilized in a live-work fashion.
Okay. How are you going to manage those additional tandem spaces that are currently not, or the parking exception is for non-accessible parking? And so when usually there's 3 spaces assigned to a unit, how are you going to manage those offshoots, those third spaces?
Sure. On all our projects, we hire a third-party parking operator who specializes in assigning and managing the parking assignments and layout. We'll work very closely with them as well with our residents to ensure that they're assigned in an appropriate manner and that our tenants' requirements are met.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a speaker card from Mr. Jeffrey Roy.
Thank you. As city staff explained, the new development is located on the corner of Brand Boulevard and Vassar Street. I live on Vassar Street, just down the street from the new development, and I'm here on behalf of my family and the neighbors on my street who were unable to attend. The parking on our street is a major concern. I understand that the development will provide excess parking. However, parking is very congested on the street already. I am concerned that visitors, customers to the site will create additional parking congestion when having to park on the street. Note that the city staff indicated that the proposed parking included at this site will be inaccessible. This will create more parking congestion for the residents on Vassar. In addition, the new driveway for the development will be accessed off Vassar Street. I am concerned that this will turn Vassar into a cut-through street and increase traffic on an already narrow street. I would like the city to conduct a traffic study in our area to determine if the traffic calming measures such as speed bumps or traffic lights, are warranted to ensure the safety of the residents. If traffic is already poor in the area, any additional traffic will make the situation worse. This study should not be conducted in a box, only looking at the trips created by this project, but look at the entire area. These items, the traffic and the parking, need to be sufficiently addressed prior to granting any variances. Thank you for your time.
Now, obviously, the trips within the neighborhood are not just the actual project itself, but the existing developments surrounding the project. So at this point in time, I'd like to ask Mr. Kiesel how many AM peak hour trips and how many PM peak hour trips does this particular 26-unit live-work project?
The traffic study that was conducted is in front of you.
Is in mine.
It's I think it's in the comments from other departments. I want to say 13 peak traffic trips in the morning and 18 in the afternoon peak hour. 16? Okay. It's in the, if you want me to come up, I can.
Actually, the memo determined that the trips generated by the project would be far less, 13 AM trips and 16 PM trips.
Okay.
So, which is definitely much less than the 50 required for AM or PM trip generations for adjacent intersections. So that would necessitate. Yes, I believe you. Why don't you come to the podium again, since you didn't use up all your time?
So we already have apartment complexes and other areas that already create trips. So how is the study addressing? If we're only looking at just that unit, and we're only looking, or just at the new development, and it's 13 to 16, and then we're adding another one that's 13 to 16, another one 13 to 16. How are we ever really looking at the aggregate? That's what my comment is.
Okay, thank you. I will definitely take that under submission and in terms of the cumulative effects. So with that said, I believe, yes, Mr. Khan, would you like to take the rebuttal period?
Sure. Just real briefly, Ms. Zimatitis, a few things, and I pointed out in that. One, taking into consideration the existing trips, there's an existing land use on the site right now that's generating many trips. In terms of those trips, those traffic trips from that automobile rental facility, those are actually going away. So our trips that are being generated, and you pointed that out accurately, there's 13 AM peak hour trips and 16 PM peak hour trips. So in terms of the trips that are being generated, very different. Also, our trips in terms of being the timing of it and when they're being generated, not just for the AM and peak end, but throughout the day, is very different because we have people that are actually operating and living there. So they hopefully aren't driving as much as, say, the existing auto facility that's there right now is. So that should be considered. Secondly, in terms of the traffic study or traffic impact in the area, it was pointed out if there's a parking issue, they can go for a preferential parking program. The city offers that as well. In terms of other traffic in the area, there is traffic in the area. There's traffic all over the city of Glendale. But in terms of our project generating traffic or our project impacting parking, we are not. Thank you for your consideration. We hope that you look favorably upon this. Thank you.
With that said, I will now close the public hearing, and I will be making a decision on these particular applications sometime shortly. There are no further items on today's agenda, so the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much for coming.